Hey, everybody. All right, so how we're going to organize the rest of the user group is we've got some panelists here. I'll introduce them. Then we're going to open it up to everybody to ask questions. And then lastly, why everybody came, we're going to raffle off some Databricks swag. All right, so first I'll kind of just go over, kind of the origin story with our panelists. So I've known Mike probably for, I don't know, probably about 8 years now.
Yeah,
He's a
decade.
former boss and colleague and friend. Has I don't know, 2 decades of industry experience as a data scientist, a practitioner, and a practice lead. And then Josh and our origin story isn't as far back. It goes back about a year ago. We actually live in the same apartment complex. And we over the summer, I saw he was reading an AI book. So I was like, hey, you in this field? And we chatted and we keep in touch. And now we've got a good set of panelists here to talk to everybody. So
very small walkie story.
Oh yeah, very, yeah. Yep. So really excited that we have these 2 panelists here, and it's going to be an entertaining conversation. So yeah, I mean, I think before we kick off, like this user group, as you can see, we're kind of bringing in, we've kind of made a couple pivots. One is we're emphasizing networking and community, right? So the goal of the user group is to bring everybody together, facilitate good conversations, and just geek out on data and AI, right? And we want to do that by bringing in industry speakers, experts in the field to facilitate that conversation. So without further ado, we'll kick off the panel. So I'm gonna make it easy on our panelists to start off. Just throw up a softball question. You can answer this question in one of 2 ways. So if you had to choose one model to use the rest of your life, what would that model be? What would the algorithm be? Or you can answer the question, what is your favorite part of being a data scientist? So we'll give you 2 options there to start.
Go for it. Well, how would I answer both a little bit? Real quick, I'll just say, I think the best part about data science is just the curiosity of solving problems. There's always a different problem, different use case, things that you're exploring and trying to work on. That's what always led me to the, job function versus kind of computer science in general, which is my background. So I've got a PhD in computer science, went through kind of bachelor, undergrad all the way through, and really focused on data mining to solve practical applied problems in the field. I think if I had to pick a model, generally speaking, I would just say decision trees. So rather than a specific one, I mean, you could say XGBoost, I guess, because that's what everyone likes to use nowadays. But I think just the practicality of a decision tree, from even just doing literally one decision tree and explaining it to the business and like, this is how this could work and we could make a decision off of it, all the way up to large ensembles of random forests and things to actually get some really highly accurate models out of it. So I'd say that's maybe one model that you can do a whole bunch with, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I know Mike well enough where I already had his answer written down. I should have done a sports bet thing.
Yeah. And I laugh because that's how coding out decision tree back in freshman year of college here is like, that's how I realized I wanted to go into data engineering and kind of the data field in general. So that's where I changed kind of the course of my life in that sense of like, not only was I in the software engineering major here, but I kind of then start figuring out my specialty because of coding something so simple.
Yeah.
But I like really went hard. That was like the one assignment in that class I went really hard on. And it was really cool. And my professor was very impressed about how much I worked on it.
Yeah, I think so Mike was actually my first boss as a practicing data scientist. So Mike instilled the foundations in me. And when you think about explainability is really important, right? And decision trees have that essentially kind of built in. It's easier to interpret that type of model that instead of using other things to interpret feature importance. So another question that is kind of all over the media today and gets kind of mixed feedback is around kind of the use of AI. And even frankly, board members are advising, organizations to maybe be a little more cautious or trepidatious still. So the first topic that I want to touch on is around ethics and responsible AI. So how can organizations build trust with stakeholders regarding these technologies? How would you suggest that they do that?
Oh, you're going from the softball to hardball.
Yeah. I'm
So,
a good pitcher. That's what you gotta do if you want to strike somebody out.
Honestly, yeah. So I first off, like, I think a key point of all of this is to take ethics very seriously, and that's something I especially being an alum of MSUE, or at MSUE, is very important, and something that I've always pushed for also in my professional life. So I think that's the key. And the reason I think it's most prominent in the news story that has held on to me is I think there was recently this summer just a very wild, almost dystopian news story about like a 13-year-old committing suicide because a chatbot told them to. And I think that one holds me. I think about it most nights, after I'm done with my job. I'm like, is this something that can I live with? Can I live with what I create? And so I think that's something that you have to really consider in this degree, in this specialty in general, is just that's kind of the level of ethics you have to apply, but also then that's what the level of safety for everyone that you have to come at with. And I think it's critical, because I do think as many organizations take that seriously, but not towards their users, almost trying to protect themselves from legal responsibility. And it's important to really consider both ends of that, of like how can you protect yourself as a company, and what safety implementations can you put in, and then also protect the users. And that's just been the case for AI in general. If you think about even AI and robotics and stuff like that, you need those fail safes, those safeguards in place. It's a very important part of the industry. Something that's starting to catch up, but is something that's lacking. And a lot of that is just, you have to build out AI responsibly. We could talk about this more probably in later questions, but I'll drop the big one now. AI lives and dies in committees. And I think part of doing that is building out that safety and responsibility. So
I think maybe just to tie into what you're saying there, something that I've seen a lot recently with kind of the modern hype around AI, is that ethical responsibility still lies with you as the practitioner using it. So if you're going to go use OpenAI or one of these big models to do something at your business, it's not on OpenAI for how that model behaves. It's now on you and your business, your company, on what happens there.
Yeah.
And you see lots of those news stories, right, of all the different models kind of getting tricked. I think there was like the one a couple of years ago, like a car was sold for $1 or something because they like tricked the sales.
I love that one.
Sales bot, and it's like, that's on you guys for how that you had that model set up. But I think, ethics in general, even going back, decades ago with just data science, machine learning in general, there's a lot of things around responsible data science practice, and a lot of labs working on that. And even some of the basic stuff when you talked about modeling was, does this problem we're trying to solve in this kind of way even pass a sniff test in the first place? There's a really good classic example, it's probably 20 years ago or something, with trying to take just images of prisoners or inmates, I think it was, and say, would they commit another crime or not? And so it was saying, just by looking at a picture of a person, you're going to judge, your model's going to predict, are they going to commit a crime again? And that doesn't really pass the sniff test in the first place. So I think you've got to kind of just step back and understand, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And then with kind of the committee approach too, it's diverse opinion. It's a lot of people that actually have the final say to decide, are we going to roll this out or not? And then be transparent about what we're doing. You see that a lot now with, this is powered by AI or something, it'll say. And at least you're being honest that it's AI doing this for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a part of that transparency is probably like you mentioned, like even saying that you're using AI. How many emails do you get a day that you can read them and you know that they're using AI to generate that meeting with using just or with the dash, right?
Yep.
And they don't mention it under there.
Right.
So that's a good call out. I think I believe there's two things that go hand in hand, like the ethical considerations around AI and AI literacy. Like you need both of them. And to Mike's point around the sniff test and kind of making sure the business context is there, that goes along with both of those pillars, right? You have to have kind of the awareness and literacy that you can apply AI in a way that can solve this problem, and it has the context around like the problem to actually like do it in an ethical way. So we talked a little bit about ethics and responsible AI. I want to kind of shift it a little bit and talk more about practical implementation challenges. Like, how should companies balance, ethics, compliance, governance, the topics we just talked about here, with like innovation and the fast pace and high expectations around that? Do you have any kind of guidelines or advice around that?
I'll keep trading off.
Yeah.
I'll give a little answer.
Yeah.
Well, I think the big thing with governance, you see, and from data and AI in general, when we're talking about governance, is if you make it difficult and you add too much friction, people are going to go around it anyways and do those things you don't want them to do. So you can't really just lock it down and police it and say, don't do this, because they'll find another way. And you saw that back with just, data science, data engineering kind of stuff, a lot of using reports to not be reports, but to be data dumps, and then doing Excel work and stuff after that.
Yeah.
The classic Excel.
Yeah.
Rogue IT goes back hundreds of years. Well,
As long as it's been around, people have skirted that. So I think a big part about practical modern governance is more the guardrail and enablement, rather than the police and the say, you can't do any of these things. Like, how do we enable people to do the things they're going to do anyways?
And again, I think it's a sniff test too. Like if you have a business case, really, again, building out a diverse set of opinions that's going to be able to tell you and inform you, is this something that works? Is this something that makes sense from a business perspective, but also then from a user's perspective, right? Are we going to put people at risk? And I think this isn't unlike any other business use case or business problem that you're ever going to solve. You have to sit down and at some point you have to make that determination. So it's just very heightened. And I think a lot of that is both the workaround aspect and the fact that some of this is unknown, right? Some of this, AI is a big scary thing to a lot of people. And so you mentioned AI and it's either like, oh, just do whatever you want. I don't understand it, but go for it. Or, oh, you can't do any of that. You got to lock this down. It's got to be, it's got to be perfect. And like, that's not, it's not what AI is at the end of the day. So it's neither perfect nor it's neither side of that perfection line. It's kind of just, it gives you a probability at the end of the day.
I think it's important too to just think about what problem you're solving.
Yeah.
Right. If it's a internal document chatbot for your company, risk is pretty minimal. If it screws up, if it doesn't give you the right answer, it's an internal problem you got to fix. If you're making, credit decisions or something externally with customers, it's a way different application that has way different risk profile and governance needs then. So, it comes back to the problem in the first place.
Yeah, and also considering or setting the expectation that, we're training data here, it's going to learn over the course of time. So having a feedback loop is important so that, you can correct those mistakes over the long haul.
The data governance aspect to this is actually very interesting, where data governance was catching up, even going back to Databricks and stuff, was very much catching up, circa 2021, 2022. And then now it's like sprinted away. So a lot of the stuff, even from Databricks' perspective, that they've been building out, like MLflow and stuff like that, has been around that tracing and usability side of building AI and then deploying it. So it's very interesting because that kind of leads into all of this conversation of how do you enable everything? How does the data flow work? How do you measure what data you're using and determine its capacity to be good data, bad data? Is it data that you want? What's happening is, I think, a big thing and something that the industry's catching up to again. It was very interesting to me because I was in especially that space in 2022 and could see the industry catching up, and then now it's like ChatGPT blew that out of the water.
Data governance maturity, it definitely is industry specific, right? Like financial services is typically quite a bit ahead of manufacturing, for instance, or new tech.
I think I'd just add to that. I mean, my chatbot example, to your point with Databricks, what I've seen in there now is, having that housed in that environment. It's all the framework around modeling that really matters. It was the same with machine learning 20 years ago. And now, like if you deployed that chatbot and it's giving you bad answers, you can flag that and it goes back to the developers and actually shows you the examples, lets you fix them, and lets you improve that. So that's a really cool way, just like it's all integrated together, to your point. Like maybe they're catching back up a little bit, or trying to.
I was going to say that too. It's pretty cool. But I think also going off of that, like hindsight now, 2020, you can look back to like, the original use cases of ChatGPT 3 and then 4 now. It's like those original use cases that you saw were those internal document dumps of having all this corporate documentation and stuff, putting it in, feeding it into a chatbot, and then having it spit out internal, answers. Because that's something that you can get fairly easily approved, that can roll forward pretty, quickly in any industry. And I think
that every company needs.
Yeah, and this was like this very simple use case at the end of the day. But I think now it's again going very hard to get external use cases approved, especially in very specific domains and very specific industries. So it's pretty interesting now to watch that play out.
Yeah, so we mentioned data governance, so I want to do a little plug for next month. So next month, we're going to bring in some data architects, data engineers, and talk more about kind of some core challenges around data.
That's your lead into it.
We'll drill down deeper into some of those maybe horror stories next month. So I read an interesting article over the weekend. Actually, one of the Anthropic co-founders made a public statement recently that EQ is becoming more critical than IQ because of the adoption and use of AI. Particularly, you've got basically intelligence at your fingertips. So now, organizations will look towards, their workforce to provide kind of more than just that raw intelligence, right? I think communication has always been important as a data science practitioner, but what is kind of your take on soft skills? Like, how are they critical for AI or data science success?
I was going to say communication is pretty much the big thing. I mean, in general, if you're on a software team at all, or you're in a comp sci team, you have to work very closely with your teammates for the most part, especially if you're working on a very complex project of any sort. So I don't think it's like anything new. I think that's I saw that comment too, and it's kind of a shoe-in answer, right? It's kind of, okay, what's next? If I can Google search anything, it doesn't matter anyways, right? So it's always been this thing of like, okay, those soft skills do matter more than the intelligence aspect. And I think that's always been the kind of like movement in the software industry in general, is how do you get from, just learning the basics, learning how to code, learning how to do things, to then building and working on teams and building out big projects. And a lot of that is the communication. A lot of that is being able to work with people outside of your skill set, outside of your specialty, to really then form those diverse opinions to come together and lead into everything that we're talking about. So it's pretty, like, I think that's kind of the formative thing, and something that is stressed a lot in, especially like software engineering degrees nowadays, is that's a big thing. I think, and MSU in particular has a class that's just that, like, how the hell do you work in the team? And that was always that was one of the interesting things to me as an MSOE student, as like, oh, this class is kind of bullshit, right? It doesn't matter. It's like, but then at the end of the day, you work with that team of maybe 2 or 3 people, and you can see how that helps. And then you can roll into a senior design project where you're kind of shoved out and doing your own thing. And it's like, oh, now I actually have to work with the team. And so it's nice to have that basic information around how do I communicate, how do I structure sprints and stuff like that, and how do I actually build out stuff. So I think from that perspective, it's always been a thing to me of like how those soft skills do matter. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
Is that part of a CS program then?
That's part of the SE program here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
specifically.
like the rooms are in,
Yeah.
this room is oriented in pods.
Yeah.
You walk in, so I put them in rows, so they do have,
Yeah.
they put a pretty good emphasis on collaboration.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Not to be a big MSOE plug, but that's also one of the reasons I went to MSOE. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I went because of that. I wanted to develop the soft skills, and I had seen from an kind of an industry perspective in talking to professors circa 2016, 2017, that was going to be a big change. That's a big thing in the industry side of things. So it's kind of why I made my decision at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, with soft skills, I like to point out the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and change management.
Yep.
Like all 3 of those are big.
Yeah, I would add on to that. I guess a couple different tangents there I was going to say about that. EQ, everyone's talking about, to your point, and what you just hit on was AQ. So it's IQ, EQ, and AQ, and AQ is your adaptability quotient. So how do you handle change and handle growth? And so when you think of soft skill, it's that growth mindset. And we all know, I mean, computer science has always been that way. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
Now with AI, I mean, you can't even hang on to how fast it's moving now. So you're going to have to change. You're going to have to continually learn the whole time. But then what I always come back to are the first 2 C's, right? Communication and collaboration are king, no matter what. I think, if I keep telling history lessons, I guess, I don't feel that old, but
I see that gray hair.
there is a little bit of gray coming in now. You go back, say, middle like 2010, 2015 or so, and you had that rock star data science persona.
Yep.
That was because IQ actually mattered more then, because it wasn't commoditized yet.
Yeah.
All those algorithms were the actual developers that knew how to do it. So you could put up with that persona of you're a kind of a lone rock star, you're doing your own thing, you don't need to cooperate or communicate. That's our wizard in the corner that's going to do all this magic for us. And that didn't last long for all those obvious reasons, but I think that's where you just see that trend from IQ into EQ with the AQ just always being there,
And that's kind of an interesting thing to have seen is the biggest trend in the industry is really moving from like data science as being just a standalone, some wizard in the corner, to being team thing.
Right.
To being a team project or working across not only multiple teams, but entire organizations now. And I think that's a huge thing. That's a huge change in the industry I honestly don't see people talking about all that much. So it's pretty cool.
I think that change has already matured a lot.
Yeah.
That's probably why people don't talk, because all those roles became specialized.
Yep.
When you were that rock star data scientist, you were also your data engineer, you were also your data analyst. None of those other roles existed, or they did, but the industry didn't know that they needed them.
Yeah.
And that was, I was that case, as well as a lot of other people, where they said, we need to do data science, we're gonna go hire a data scientist, and now we can do it.
Yep.
Well, you have no data engineering, you don't have anything in order at all, you have no interface with the business, and what is that one data scientist supposed to be doing out there? So we've matured into having all those specializations, all those different roles to support that in a much collaborative, communicative way to bring it back.
I mean, data engineering like 10 years ago was just like move this file from here to
Right.
there every weekday
Right.
and make sure it works forever and ever. So
know when it's ready.
yeah, it's like a lot has changed, and I think that's a huge thing. Going back even a few years, as people are learning and trying to freaking out almost because, Databricks, especially entering the game and making kind of this seamless movement in your data a thing and more of a reality. That was a huge eye awakening in the industry, I believe. And hindsight's 2020 now, so it's like it was at the end of the day like this huge thing where I saw a lot of people being like, oh my God, I just know how to do file dropping, or just know how to do this small aspect of what is becoming a very broad data engineering field. So pretty interesting.
I think even having the unified platform
Yeah.
is a big game changer for that, because you understand, like, well, I'm working in this tab all the time,
Yeah.
but they're just in that tab. Like, you can move around and see what different roles are doing, where it used to be, everyone was just siloed. I'm on my laptop, you're on your laptop. We have
We're
no
on my
idea.
machine.
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing too, is people don't realize, like, you're building Databricks, I can just share what I'm working on with someone else, right? And they're building it with me. It's literally Google Docs in that sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where data science is happening. That's where like decisions are being made now. And I was saying this like 3 years ago to my boss at the time, like, if you're not doing like this kind of movement into Databricks, this movement to like a near real-time data engineering landscape, oh my God, you were like 2 years behind, and that was like 3 years ago. So it's kind of crazy now to see how fast all that's moving. So
Absolutely.
And Zero Bus just was GA'd like a week or two ago, right? To streamline that real-time data ingest. So
Ben, can I just throw this out? I know you threw out another Zero Bus thing, but there's a lot of folks here who have no idea what you just said.
yeah, so I'll repeat that.
Just a
call
quick
out.
intro
Yeah.
to Zero Bus. Sorry.
So Zero Bus is a new component of Databricks, essentially to simplify the data ingest for real-time telemetry data. So this goes back to Mike and I doing telemetry of vehicles, 8 years ago, probably.
Yeah. A lot of
That
Kafka.
was complex, right? Like, you had teams of engineers, data engineers, to get the results there. And this is just technology that just simplifies that stack. So I think it's a game changer for a lot of industries, but especially industrial manufacturers.
I think from a broad perspective too, it's very interesting that we're talking about this kind of broadening of data engineering, but then now data engineering and the data science aspects are kind of merging together. I'm finding myself talking very closely to data engineers more, from a data science perspective than I was as a data engineer doing that a few years ago, even, where I think, I saw, if you asked me a few years ago, I would have told you like kind of the data science aspect was going to go in one direction, data engineering was going to go in another. They work together, but kind of like they're stacked on top of each other more than anything, right? And now, like you asked me, it's like, you gotta do both at the same time. That's why it's like someone asked me, oh, how do I do data science? How do I get into this? And it's like, well, can you run with both legs? You can't just you can't do one thing at a time. You've got to do both together and really push that forward in any industry and any company, which is a difference than what I thought was going to happen, at least.
So a couple more questions here. We've got a little more time. So I read an MIT report that suggested that 95% of AI use cases fail to deliver some measurable impact, business impact. So I think the second last question I have is, why do you perceive that to be true or false?
Go for it.
That they're all failing?
That most of them are failing, 95%. So this is from a MIT report.
Yeah, I think
I've
I've
sent
seen that
receipts
headline.
later. After.
Yeah.
But yeah, 95% of AI use cases fail to deliver measurable business impact.
Yeah. There's been lots of headlines like that. And I think in my experience, I've seen a lot of projects fail. Maybe one of the biggest reasons is not solving the right problem in the first place in the right way. So not talking to the business, not knowing the why of what are we doing. And so, and that kind of goes back to that, without that communication and collaboration, without business being involved, you know, a data scientist or a data team in general might latch on to something that looks interesting and go solve it and spend 6 months going after something and say, hey, we're doing all this fancy, amazing data science, AI, and then they finish and realize the business has no appetite for this, or it doesn't actually have measurable context in the right way. Maybe it could have, but the way that they finished it, it didn't. And so now a lot of businesses that maybe aren't AI and data literate to kind of pivot those properly say, well, okay, 6 months, fail, you know, F kind of thing. And I think that's what gets rolled into those statistics.
Binary.
Right.
Yeah.
Where like it probably didn't totally fail, and you've probably got a lot of fundamentals, you've got data landing properly, like maybe you can tweak and salvage this in some way. And your team probably learned a lot too while they're doing it.
Yeah.
But that might be just that binary fail. Like we didn't solve that problem that we asked you to solve, you know?
Yeah. And a part of that is just following kind of the agile way,
Right.
like process. So like every 2 weeks, you're basically forced to work with the business and get iterative feedback, right?
Right. I think that's paramount. You know, you've got to do that.
Also, a lot of that in that article is like chatbot. And I think that's a big thing that we saw in the industry is like, oh, there's ChatGPT, chatbot, you can do it too. And it's like, I think a lot of those use cases are, you can do, but how much will they help? And, you know, are you targeting anyone? Like, and this is like going back to like, oh, you can just make an internal tool that does this. I can make an internal Power BI dashboard too, but will anyone look at it? You know, I can make an internal thing. No one's going to look at it. Like that's a big meme on the internet of like, oh, I spent the last year of my life making this internal tool that no one will look at. And it's like, oh, that's, you know, that's kind of a case in software in general is that's going to happen quite a bit. And I think that's where you see the failures as well stack in of like, there wasn't anything there.
Yeah. I think maybe, you know, you made me think of that. There's nothing wrong with failing either sometimes, right? I mean, sometimes you do need to fail projects and fail fast, ideally in an agile methodology. But I wonder now, I'm not really in software as much as you are, with AI kind of vibe coding your way to quick solutions, can you fail even faster? Or, you know, instead of, oh, I spent a year building this internal tool, well, I spent my last weekend building it now, right? And like, does it have traction or not?
And I think that's a big thing. I mean, going into the software engineering landscape a little bit, I think that's a big change in the industry is now you're seeing people, can I fail really quickly in what I'm doing? And I think this is just across the board in general is like a lot, you know, if I want to do something, I'll take a few hours after work and be like, can I figure this out?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's to me, like, it's very hard for me to like, just sit down and just like code. It's like, I have to be given like a problem. I'm like great working in teams and stuff, but like starting from scratch, looking at that blank page, it's hard for me. And so it's like very interesting now to go and be like, oh, here, boom, make this for me. And then how do I debug that? How do I go through it? And I think even for me, it's a big thing in debugging or figuring out code now, even is like, I think a big thing that I was talking to my coworkers about recently is just using it to learn. And like, oh, here's an entire repo of stuff. Tell me the basics about it, right? Where is this method, you know, or I'm having this issue, where would this be located? I think for a massive, you know, even if you're having like 100 microservices or whatever, right? Being able to even crawl entire sets of repositories now to figure out which one is causing the issue, that's unheard of a few years ago. And I think that's the real thing for software engineers now and going into the data science landscape as well, of being able to do that quickly. I think, again, going and using Databricks and stuff, I'm able to fail much faster than, you know, even a few years ago, I was doing, you know, these data engineering pipelines and building stuff out. Now I can just do that in an hour or two. Yeah. And it's crazy to me because it was taking me entire work days to figure out some of that before. So it's very cool. It's like there's a lot of it that in general, I think is overhyped and overdone. I think that's kind of the takeaway from a lot of this discussion. But I think also there's cool stuff, and it's specifically changing our own industries. It's kind of weird because it's affecting our like software and data science creation the most, and it's weird because all the innovation is also in that space. So it's very self-contained, I feel, where a lot of like the general public doesn't see that aspect of it, where it's like, oh, I'm using it's hard to fathom the fact to like, and even my family members that, oh, I just vibe code and that's a daily part of my job now. And it's like, it's hard to me. I graduated college like 5 years ago, and that's very crazy to me now to be like, oh, I just give it to AI to code half the time. That's wild. So it's interesting. It's changing.
I think if I added anything to that, we're just gonna have our own conversation.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, don't worry.
We're not here.
You know, what I say to a lot of people is AI is still just a tool in your toolkit.
Yeah.
And as we come out of this hype and get back to kind of that plateau of productivity, we're gonna understand what that tool is good at and why we should be using it for what tasks. But like, there's plenty of traditional data science, machine learning, other algorithms like decision trees that are great for their purpose that all this AI hype might not be as good for. Well, we're just like in that hype cycle right now, so it's hard to ignore it or get away from it, you know?
Yeah.
Did you hear the fact that like the way that they're getting over like the strawberry problem with AIs now and stuff, like counting like the R's in strawberry?
I know the problem, but I haven't heard the solution.
They're now just having it code its own solution and then passing the question back into the code and having it run the code. And it's like, oh, that's sneaky, but like that's a way to get around it, which it's fascinating. I was looking about that, like popped in my feed like a month ago or something. I was like, oh, that's a really smart way to get over that.
Well, it's all code under the hood.
Yeah.
Right? So like I'll use like Claude to ask it like, hey, make me this document. Well, you can see it open up some JavaScript and start writing the code to generate that Office document. So, you know, it's not like it's just opening up the editor and typing it in or something. It's all code.
Which is, again, like people don't really understand that from the outside, is that's the way that they're just getting around this in general now, is it's really good at creating code and really like, really good at not hallucinating that aspect of things. And that's where it's like, oh, well, if I can't solve this problem right away, you know, or I need something external, just create the code for it, run it, boom, done. It's like, oh, that's a interesting workaround. It's like, I think in LLMs in general are kind of reaching like a head. There is a plateau to all of this, but I think that's the way that they're really starting to circumvent some of those plateauings and how we deal with the existing barriers and boundaries of the current technologies we're working with AI. And it's just like, oh, you know, if I can't figure this out, I can't do this on my own, just create the code for it, go run it, boom.
All right, yeah, so we'll end with another softball here. And it extends kind of the conversation we just had around the AI hype. But both of you have worked across industries. So the question is, you know, what industries do you think will be most disrupted by AI over the next, let's say, 2 years? We kind of talked a little bit about it.
Well, you kind of just gave it. I mean, besides our own industry,
let's exclude kind of the code software aspects.
I think in Wisconsin in general, a really cool thing is a lot of stuff is made physically. We're a very manufacturing heavy state in general. And if this gives you a little insight to like why I like my job, it's that like I think a lot of what's going to be affected is how do you drive value for some of those physical products, right? And how do you deliver for users? A lot of users are purchasing actual physical items, physical things that can be bought. Once they have that in their hand, what value add can I add to that? Some of that is maybe having a chatbot somewhere. Some of that is maybe having more advanced AI algorithms, something with those devices. But how can I do that? And I think broadly in the entire state, that's a very interesting thing that we can drive, and is something it excites me to live here in general. It's like, that's a very cool aspect of the state.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the probably more compelling reasons why, Milwaukee could become one of the next tech hubs is because of the boom in that industrial manufacturing space. Like it's kind of lagged behind maybe the last 5 to 10 years, but it's catching up, and there might be some opportunities there, a boom of some sort.
Yeah, I like that answer. I mean, if you find those, to your point, you're gonna be ahead of the market,
Yep.
really quick. I think, my answer to that might already be dated. So if we're talking, the next 2 years, it's probably already solved, sadly. But I think like 2 areas that you saw a lot right away, and I'm sure the industry hasn't fully matured or caught up to it yet. But one would be anything with kind of the large corpus of text and the specialized answers. So the 2 obvious there would be legal and medical.
Yeah.
So you think of like lawyers. My dad was a lawyer, so the amount of knowledge that you have to digest and synthesize and understand to then get a specific case that you need to put an argument towards is a really hard thing to do and almost trivial for LLMs now.
Yeah.
And the same thing they say with medical diagnosis. Obviously, you want a human in the loop. I'm not going to say that, but to go through all of that medical knowledge and then tailor a solution to a specific patient is a really challenging thing, and doctors don't have enough time to do it anyways. So getting ahead of that and giving them that prescriptive output right away is going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest area with like otherwise we're very good, well-paying jobs. Go be a doctor, go be a lawyer. I don't know that you'd say that anymore to people in the same way anyways.
I think that's one of the things that's very scary to me, honestly,
Yeah.
is like what happens with all of those professions, right? You may have, same with our industry, is something that keeps me awake at night too, is like, okay, I heard this recently of like, there's going to be 2 classes of software engineers in the future, like data scientists, of like people who made it, who have specialties, who have the knowledge and can really power through, and just the underclass. And it's like, I think that's going to be it's a scary thing to consider in all industries that are like, have that split in intelligence almost. Of like, okay, can you power through a certain degree to get to that level of intelligence, to be that doctor that is making the decisions? For the AI is feeding you something, and then you're saying you're making the final go ahead, or you're doing the final surgery, right? And it's like, that's kind of the interesting thing to me of it keeps me awake at night.
Yeah, those that have embraced AI
Yeah.
now can 10x their productivity because
Yeah.
they've mastered, the technology, and those maybe that haven't and have been left behind.
And it'll be very hard to get into those industries, right? If you can't do your first surgery, until you've done your 10th surgery, then you're never going to be able to do a first surgery. If all the basic, law cases are being taken to trial, mostly with AI, then you're never going to be the one that takes it to trial. And that's kind of a scary thing from like a kind of getting into those industries in general. I think is a big problem that you're seeing emerge this year. And I think it's going to be something that's talked about heavily.
I think I'd add, software for sure. If you're not embracing the tools now, you're not going to have a career in a couple more years, just plain and simple. And I think you could even say that to like the lawyer argument, because it comes back to value and time and money. And you used to think about like teams, like legal teams that would have to sit down and pour through discoveries on big cases. That's done overnight now, by an AI. And so if you're not doing that, who's going to pay you to do it the old-fashioned way? Because you're going to be exorbitantly more expensive than your competitors. So the market is going to dictate that you're going to be out of a job.
Yeah.
Same with software engineer. You might be great with your IQ in your old job, but you're just going to be out of the market just from a financial perspective. I'd say the other area too that we're already seeing would be like call centers and things. So anywhere where you're talking like speed and call volume, and you've got to scale out like human operators, that's already getting replaced. At least tier 1, maybe tier 2 is happening right away. And I remember working on those kind of projects with traditional data science and NLP and like trying to help those call centers. Like we did a lot of that, talking about how do you prioritize so they can get the right answer quick and get to the next call faster.
I mean, Google gave that big presentation about it in like what, 2017. It's very interesting to see now that like that is coming to fruition. But everyone kind of, it was both mocked at the time, then some of that was, you know, realized that maybe it wasn't like fully there, and then like now it's actually there. And it's like, okay, now it's actually coming and affecting people. But it's interesting to also see the time lag in some of that too. I mean, that was almost a decade ago at this point.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how it's affecting industries, and I think in general, media organizations are getting that somewhat wrong, of like how it's not affecting all industries equally or in the same way. And it's really, as we're talking about these kind of middle of the road intelligence careers, where it's like, how do I get from this middle intelligence to a high intelligence position? AI is taking all those middle intelligence jobs. So even like call center was a great way to get like into an operations or an analyst job. That's gone. I mean, what do you do with all that's gone? Or like a sales role, like a basic sales role was a great way to get into like a very high powered, you know, sales position. What do I do now that's all being automated away? It's an interesting question. So.
Conversation.
On an interesting note to end it.
Yeah, great conversation. So now all the formal questions are done. We'll just open it up to the group here. If you have any questions for Josh or you know, just go ahead and.
I don't know if there's any questions online or anything.
Oh yeah, I can check. Good call out.
I don't know.
I have a question.
Go for it.
All right, so Josh, you mentioned you're doing vibe coding.
Yep.
And Mike, I don't know if you are as well at some level, but help us understand some of the challenges you're seeing with vibe coding compared to traditional software engineering.
I think an interesting case I was talking to my coworkers about recently is it's interesting to see Cursor seems to be really targeting enterprise. And how do I know that they're doing that? Because they're really hammering into the idea of rules and standardization of things. And I think that's kind of the big thing. If I can go and use 10 different LLMs, you know, and everyone can just use 10 different LLMs, well, each LLM is going to have a different output and a different way it codes and different way it tests that code and creates all of that. So building rules on an enterprise side seems to be the way forward. It's very similar to like an architectural guideline, or, you know, in sprint planning, how, you know, planning out different tickets and stuff like that. I mean, it's interesting because like a decade ago, I think I worked on a team where the architect literally built out like Google Docs of like architectural spread, like the guidelines and how he would code it. And then you would just take that and do the coding for it. Now, like there's spec-driven development. I think AWS just announced Curo, and that's been out for about a month now. That's specifically spec-driven development. And that's a whole new field that gets even more into that automation aspect. But yeah, it's very interesting to see the pivot from just, oh, I'm vibe coding, you know, I can tell it to go do something, I'll vibe code, it'll create it, boom, done. To now, how do I build the standardization? How do I build the tools to then do that on a team scale? And how can I do things with different LMs, with different ways, you know, different IDEs, all this stuff? And how do I get to similar code standards and be able to then review that? That's a problem that's being solved this year. I think we're seeing answers in the market now. And there's whole, like Curo and stuff, there's whole things that are being created, whole products that are being driven just around that, which is why I think a lot of people aren't seeing the outwards, a lot of people on the outside aren't seeing the internal stuff to the software industry as really changing. Right. I mean, the fact that like, we're like, oh, Cursor's so 6 months old. It's like that people don't realize like how silly, like that sounds silly to anyone outside the software industry. That's something that now we're like figuring out. And like I went to a talk at MSW over the summer actually, where someone was talking about that, like how they are building out processes to get legal stuff passed through quickly and efficiently for like new IDEs and new LLMs and stuff like that. And now like I was like, it's a little silly at the time. And 6-8 months later, I'm here. I'm like, yeah, you kind of have to do that. You kind of have to figure that out because the industry's changing so quickly in that regard. So I think it'll stabilize at some point, but we're halfway through that change, and it's really heavy in the software industry.
I think the thing I'd add to that, I agree,
Yeah.
same point. But even when you think of like AI models, like if you're using a model from last year, it's out of date. It's not doing anything the new models are doing anymore. It's not even the same conversation. But where everything's headed, especially software development, is declarative instead of imperative. Just like Databricks is doing with data engineering. So you're specifying what you want, and you better know why you want it. And the AI agents are doing the how. And that's back to the IQ situation. Like all the coding, the algorithms, it's all commoditized. All you need to be able to do is articulate the spec-driven development to say, this is what I want and how I can test against what I want to make sure that's what you're delivering me. And so to your point, if you're a software engineer, your job is not what it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not even the same job anymore, but you're still a software engineer.
Yeah.
It's not like you're losing your job necessarily. It's just radically changing how you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, as a builder, that's the dream, right? To have a tool at the fingertips that can translate what you want to do.
Yeah.
But as a learner, it kills me.
Yeah.
Because then I like every day I'm like, I really want to fully understand all of this, but it's like, got to drive productivity, got to drive different things as well. And that's a way to be more productive in the software industry. It's like, if I don't have to understand something, that saves me time. That saves, I can build something more. And it kills me as someone who likes to learn in depth and likes to learn everything. So I don't know, it's a different way to approach the job.
We're not hand coding our decision trees anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the stuff I love. So
yeah.
Yeah, so just to add on to your conversation, I think one important skill that students like me or professionals like you, the companies or even the economy of a country needs its adaptability to this new AI tools, and I try to embrace them every time. As this past weekend, I was experimenting with OpenClaw because I saw it on Twitter, it was booming. And
Careful.
Yeah, I also like self-driving vehicles, and I was working with telemetry data, and since Ben now mentioned Zero Bus in Databricks is something I want to experiment. So what are the ways you guys adapting this new AI tools?
Check out my blog on Zorwix.com on Zero Bus. How about that?
Oh, good.
Start. It's a great article on some guy I know wrote it.
I think the really simple answer I have for that is, unlike other new skills, you've always had to upskill, right? You've always got to keep up, even as a professional. But now the new technology can actually be used to learn the new technology, right? When people say like, well, I don't know how to get started with AI, go ask AI how to start with it, and it will actually teach you how to use it. You couldn't do that in anything before. So like the barrier to entry to learn is zero now, which is really cool.
It's also going to be a generational thing, and you're seeing this. I feel like the last group of folks that used Google primarily, and I used to say like my degree is in Googling stuff, and it's very different. I think from a learning perspective, a student or someone new to the industry is going to overthink that and is going to overuse AI tools and some of that. But it's like how my mentors told me back in the day, you got to stop Googling stuff. You got to just sit there and, think about it. And you got to work through it. And if after an hour you're still stuck, that's when you go and ask someone. But you've got to go through that learning process of like, oh, how do I do this? How do I make this work? What is the way to go about this? And I that's still true today somewhat, is like, I think, again, you don't need to know everything, but coming from a fundamentals perspective, that's the way forward in this industry still, is you need to understand the fundamentals, mostly because of a whole different topic that we haven't talked about at all, which is like MRPR reviewing is like a very big thing now, and it was not before. And I think when another accidental plug for MSOE is that's a big thing MSOE pushed as well, very much in their software engineering program, is being able to review that better and to do that process of how do I take code that I wrote and now put it in a production environment. And that's I think where you still need the hard skills. I think that's where the intelligence side matters still.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm a tinkerer. I like to experiment, but I also carve out time to reflect. To point both points here. So, I mean, I think it's still important to take a step back and review what AI is producing as kind of a core aspect of usability for these tools.
Yeah. I think 2 years ago, if you asked, I would have said leak code's dead or going to be dead in 2 years. And now 2 years later, I would say do leak code, do those problems. They're going to help you more figure out how to solve problems in the industry than sitting there like on Cursor or Claude Code and being like, build this for me. That's what your boss, that's what my boss tells me to do. I have to go figure it out. Like, that's kind of the big thing. And that's like, okay, how do I actually do that? How do I make sure that's right? How do I make sure even the AI written code is correct? That's all hard skills. So it's going to be a generational divide, but it's very similar. Like, you guys won't even understand this. It's going to be like, it's a very similar scenario to if like I was asking 5-6 years ago, oh, should I learn how to Google stuff better? It's like, I'm already Googling a lot. I need to probably dial that back actually. But it's a very generational divide, right? If you asked me when I was in college, I was like, I don't know how to Google all that well, even though that's my thing. I feel like I should know how to do that perfectly. Get a perfect result every time. And now it just doesn't matter. So it's very interesting. I think I keep saying interesting, but I do think that's at least my takeaway from all of this is a lot of stuff is changing. A lot of stuff is there's a lot of industry stuff driving our industry in general, and a lot of stuff that's changing. It's happening very quickly, and people aren't talking about how the internals of all that is working specifically in our own industries. It's a very weird meta conversation that we're just not having.
I'm gonna throw some comments, right, relating to everything you guys are talking about. But so one, right, 5 years ago you graduated, you were doing software engineering. It's an art and a science and a form, right? And you learn how to code well. And the new engineers are going through the vibe coding, transition. And I feel like in the future, you're going to need to know your basics correctly. Because one of the things that you will become with a vibe coding, in my opinion, is you will have to become a better debugger, right? So because something produces 10,000 lines of code, it's like Ben wrote it and gave it to Asif and says, figure out where the problems are. And you're like, dude, 10,000 lines of code, how am I going to do that? So you guys will have to become better at going through the process of 10,000 lines of code and fixing the problem quickly, whether you utilize AI or not, which previous generation didn't have to do.
I think it happened. I think that's the biggest thing. It's the biggest switch that has happened overnight, especially in the last year or so, is like now it's very important to review code before it goes in, right? Because a production issue is a production issue. It doesn't matter if it was written by you or by an AI. You're like, at the end of the day, you're still getting blamed for the code that you write. So it's how do I review that code? How do I test that? I think there's a whole testing course at MSOE that I went through that I loved, but I know the rest of my class hated. But I still have the book. It's sitting right next to my desk, and I leave it there specifically because it's a really good book that teaches about how do I effectively and efficiently test my code. The team I work on is literally called Black Box, and black box testing is a very large part of the software design and development process, and it's a full circle moment. But it's very I think that's one of the cooler things that you have to learn as a student now is how do I do everything around the actual decoding of something. Like I said, it works out very efficiently for me because I was someone that if you asked me to sit down, make something from scratch, it's going to take me forever just to get those first few lines of code written. But if you're asking me to review code or build off of it or do something more, then I'm very fast with that. And I think that's where you have to be. It's less about starting that project or like doing the first 100 lines of code. And it's more about how do I build around that? How do I just do all of this stuff in the software engineering landscape around actually coding? So
Yeah, I mean, beyond just like code review, there are a lot of core engineering skills like, root cause analysis and, communicate, all the soft skills associated with it. So I still think there's going to be, skills that are more highly, leveraged in the marketplace. They'll be shifting a little bit, right?
it's crazy too, because now I can have an AI do an RCA for me. But then it's like, how do I understand that?
Review the,
And how do I go about actually figuring that out? So there's actually moments that I put in, like I have this problem, go figure it out. And then it just this entire thing to me. And it's like, well, if I don't know what the heck I'm doing, it would be very hard for me to sit down and actually read and figure out what this AI is telling me.
you have
But
to know
it
to
can do a
ask.
whole RCA.
You have to know how to, you
Yeah.
have to know to ask. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's the skill, when to ask it and how to prompt it correctly.
Well, I think that's the key though, like you're saying, back to even Asa's question there is, we're in a very different place than
Yeah.
new people coming into their career, because we're already expertise. So even if it's not coding, say it's just, Word document generation and stuff, I can read something and say, is this correct or not? Is this what I want to say or not? And I can take over and make it the right way, or read some code snippets and know, yeah, I've coded that 100 times. I don't need to again, but I know it's right. Somebody new entering the field doesn't even know if it's right or not, or doesn't have those years of technical writing expertise. How are they going to manage that? I don't know that we know that answer yet, but it's very different than all of us that have already been here that get to take advantage of these tools with our already baked in expertise that you're not going to get anymore.
It's actually the best
Exciting ride,
the best mentorship advice I was given as an intern was just watch people code. That was like the first 3 months I was in like software engineering intern. I would just sit down and watch. I had 2 great coworkers at the time. I just watched them code. And so I would go back, maybe do like a little bit of coding on my own, but primarily when I was there, I was just watching them code. And thank God I did, because I use the stuff I learned from them, just like Git commands, for example. And like I use that now daily, if not weekly, right? And so it's like that's the hard skills that you still need to know. And those are the stuff that's not going to change. It's weird. Just like being a lawyer, being a doctor, the basics aren't going to change. It's that middle intelligence layer that's what AI is really good at. So then it's like, how do I make the high level decisions? How do I make the architectural decisions? And then how do I make the low level decisions? How do I, if something's wrong in the code, well, is that because it's an int or a string? Or should it be a string? Should it be an int? What does that mean? There's all that stuff isn't going to go away. It's just now you're going to be working with an AI. I've been saying too for like the last year, the AI is like your personal intern, and treat it like that when you're coding, right? It's someone that you can talk to and work with, and tell, hey, go figure out what's causing this bug. But at the end of the day, like that intern is your responsibility. Like you still have to go about learning what they did, the code that they created. You are responsible for what happens at the end of the day.
That's your one intern last year.
Yeah.
Now you have a team of 10 that
Yeah,
are juniors, that you need to manage effectively. So a lot of those, like you're now you basically promoted yourself to be a manager.
yeah,
It's just your subordinates are all AI agents.
yeah. What happens with everyone?
How do you do that?
What happens when everyone's an architect is a
Right.
very real
Right.
question in
Yeah, it's
2026.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we have the expertise and the experience. And then when you assign a task to a junior and they come back with, it's AI, right?
Yeah.
So then they present you with AI and you just ask, why did they do it this way? And they can't answer it.
Mm.
And that's maybe the lesson, or that's maybe the flow now.
Mhm.
I've seen that all the time. You just get an AI response back and they have no idea what it means.
It's interesting to think about AI the same way. So I'll ask AI then, why'd you do it this way?
Yeah.
Treat it like your intern
Yeah,
or your
yep,
junior
yeah.
on your team,
That's what I do too. And that's like the best way is like, okay, why did I do it this way? Or like, explain to me why this, you made it like this still doesn't pass this test or doesn't do this thing.
Yeah.
And then, then that's kind of where, but again, going back, like cursor and cursor rules and building out rules based, adding to essentially that system level prompt of the LLM, that's where a lot of this comes into play, because then I can just tell that in the system level prompt, hey, make sure I understand, or tell me as you're doing things, and you can really specify to your preference. And that's where a lot of this starts to be really cool to me, is now I can go back and forth. Like I have my coding agents do a pre-commit script that I have to run manually every time I commit code, but now I just have the agent do it, and then, okay, I just can commit that code straight away. And that was a time saver. That took me like 10 minutes to do manually and go through it and sit there and load and stuff and run stuff. Now I just have it do it. It's done. It's cool. Boom, push, merge. But like, that's kind of stuff that we're now went back and talked about like what is going to be talked about in 2026. And I think this is all stuff that's going to be really big this year. So it's something to be aware of. You'll see AI written articles about it in 6 months, don't worry.
I want to make one last comment, because this is great conversation, right? Your comment about 95% AI failing, right? So I'm just going to throw this out for all of you guys to think about. If you look at the software engineering, I bet you there's probably 80-90% of software engineering projects failing. And I want people to know not everybody can do AI, right? So there's no stat that's saying 95% of projects fail, but half of the dumbasses who were building it had no idea what they were doing, right? So there's no stat about that. Because I know we have customers who are trying to do AI, who are then coming back to us and saying, oh man, this thing's not working. The response time's not the same. The context's not the same. The response we're getting is not the same. Can your guys look at it? Yes, because we have software engineers with AI background and training. So then when they look at it, they fix it. So if you have everybody building AI who doesn't understand how to build it, 95% failure rate. Because so far, every commercial product that we have worked on in AI, everything is in production. Every one of them. 0 failures, right? So how is that possible? So that's why that stat is a little weird to me. It's like you're saying, I'm going to be a builder of houses, and everybody who in this room wants to build a house will create this amazing house that a builder of 30 years building. Yeah. Well, we are also going to build the same level of house.
Yeah, I think it's the depth, like what is success, or what is, real business value, right? You build a house, is success when you move in, or is success when you turn on the faucet and water runs, right? Those are 2 different success metrics.
And I think circling back to what you said at the beginning here too, is like, I think a lot of what's happening, especially in AI development, is going to be from that ground up. I think a lot of it, and a lot of what that metric is showing is those top-down type products, where it's like, okay, build this internal chatbot or whatever, maybe automate this stuff that like maybe there's not a business case for. And I think it's then, how do I build something for users? How do I build something that's an actual product that can deliver? And I think that's really the key. And so that plus then sprints and all that fun stuff, that's where you get that metric.
I think. Caution just the way you look at that, right? You got it from the MIT study, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's Databricks sponsored. I've had many conversations about this, right? And so I would just challenge people to think about it differently, right? Like 1 in 95, right? Like 1 in 20, it's not a bad thing, right? Like everybody points to that number and says like, this is failure. It's not. Right? We're early days in this.
Yep.
We're learning from this. There's innovation happening here, right? So like the experimentation, like I don't even know if that's high enough. Maybe that's not high enough, right? Like maybe we should be doing more. Maybe we should be failing more at this point in this thing. So again, question the number, right? Like, but also it's question, like everybody's got reaction to that is like, oh, that's bad. that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, we are learning how to do this today, and these skills are being developed, and you could actually ask, is that even a high enough number? Maybe we're not trying enough shit in this right now, right?
I think going off of that too, the Silicon Valley era, startup era kind of has died. And now I think what we've seen that come out of that is this new era with this kind of LLM explosion and this new kind of AI race, is that every company is a startup. Every company has to be a technology company now. Every company needs to know what the heck AI is and how it's going to deliver for the company that they're a part of. That's something any stakeholder, any shareholder is ever going to ask now, right? For now and into the death of AI, whatever that is, is like, that's what's going to be asked. So I think from a startup perspective, this is also the case where it's like, there's the crazy stat about the unicorn startups versus how many startups were actually created. I forget the original thing. It's like 1 in 1,000 or whatever. But that's also the case here. And that's kind of the scary thing too, is like, if you can't keep up, what happens, right? Like, everyone's going to have to utilize, AI, everyone's going to have to figure it out. And it comes, again, an expense problem, just purely out of, if I can do this for $1 with AI instead of, having someone's full job doing just that, well, the $1 I'm spending on AI is literally worth what, thousands of times more than whatever, that position I was paying for, and it becomes an expense problem at that point.
I think I just saw a stat, I think it was Claude 4.6 just recoded C compiler from scratch or something. It was like 50 grand. Well, like, all right, that's half a year of one developer's time instead of 1,000 people that probably work on that.
Yeah.
So you just start looking at the number of, like, the dollar value is just the orders of magnitude different here.
Yeah.
When we get to that. What are we doing?
All right, well, we're over time a
Oh,
little
hey,
bit,
look at
but
that.
This is great. Dylan's going to kick us out. Give a round of applause to Josh and Mike.
It was fun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we can
Sign off.
Yes. Yeah, we're a little over time, but so we got a few things to raffle actually here. Let me actually grab. I'm just gonna number these and then do it the old-fashioned way.
I didn't put my name on there, so.
Oh, you didn't?
Oh, see, that's the
Yes,
test.
but you won last time, right?
That's fine if I don't.
No.
I'm going for the 3-peat, like you said.
Yeah.
Gotta get to 2 before.
But thanks for both of you guys to come in and be part of this talk. I think it's fascinating for everybody to hear the opinions, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Question for somebody
Yeah, go
from
on.
a different field. So AI is a really desirable tool that nowadays any industry kind of want to get involved into. So what is your perspective on how AI could improve interdisciplinary problems, like, let's say, my field, chemical engineering, how could data science and AI could help? And how confident are you that your expertise in AI and data science could just improve the job of a different field? So, an example. So I was thinking that having an AI tool that could probably have internal data about a molecule that it would design and also manage to scale up so the production could be helpful. But how you guys are going to be able to get that?
NVIDIA has it, built
Really?
it out, yeah, yep. NVIDIA has an entire research organization that's dedicated to specifically that stuff, and they've built that out now.
Mhm.
They said that they announced in one of their latest talks or whatever that which I forget what pharmaceutical company, but they're already working with a pharmaceutical company to find like different pharmaceuticals that for specifically hard problems and literally non-existent solutions currently. And that's one of the reasons that they created. A lot of this was created during kind of COVID era, and a lot of this started, actually a lot of what MSUE does is an overlap of, there's an open source database with like a lot of proteins and stuff that have been created and then mapped, and then that's publicly available information. So there's just AIs created off of that data and stuff, and now they're being used to like research drugs, because a lot of the data and the modeling techniques that they used there's structures to, to how like how big proteins and stuff work and interact with each other. You put that all into an AI, give it those parameters and stuff. That's kind of what they created the original ones off of like 5-6 years ago now. And now a lot of that has been done with LLMs, and from my perspective, I think that's pretty much a solved issue. Is like, I think at least in the next 5 years, you're going to be able to see a lot of like vaccines and stuff being created. I think it's a money problem right now. Just like anything that we're talking about, it becomes a scenario like, oh, now I can figure this out, but do I want to invest the time to actually put this into a product, right, and to make it for real? And I think that's going to be the interesting problem.
Are you talking specifically protein folding?
Yeah, protein folding, and then like drug delivery and drug design, I think are the two areas that NVIDIA is working on. I haven't researched too much into that. I've been meaning to.
There's a good book called The Coming Wave that talks a lot about, like all we talk about is AI and this wave of AI. At the same exact time right now is the wave in like biomedical and like gene editing. Like the next version of CRISPR is coming out now, which is going to be orders of magnitude better than what CRISPR already was, which was already revolutionary. And so it's the combination of AI and that next wave of bioengineering. It's going to get really scary quick. I feel like
it already has. Oh, it already has.
Protein folding. I had friends in grad school working on that, because those are like NP-hard problems that like, that's a lot. Like you had like SETI at home and other sorts of like computational programs you could run on your machines. Everyone could contribute compute resources to. But I haven't seen. I have to look at that. It'll be interesting.
I think that's also a big thing too that I think the industry skipped over, is that happened during the pandemic and stuff. But like folding at home and stuff, we solved collectively, like an exaflop or power or something, actually solved a lot of the drug delivery problems with neutralizing COVID. And so like the next gen antiviral and stuff was actually created with folding at home compute power. And that was like, that was something that like was barely talked about at the time. They like the organization posted a lot about it, but it's like, that's where all this started like 5-6 years ago. And that's how CRISPR, a lot of stuff has changed because of CRISPR now. And then AI and LLMs and stuff on top of all that. A lot is going to change in that industry as well. I don't think we've even seen the start of it. That's like a whole future discussion.
We'll come back next year.
Yeah, we'll come back next year.
Absolutely.
You want to tell these numbers? Or what?
Yeah, let's call them out. Austin, do you want to call yours out first?
8.
I've got
8.
4.
I think I got a 7 here.
No way.
Yeah.
All right.
Right back then.
What do you have?
7?
So my handwriting too.
I think that's a 7.
Oh yeah, that's a 7. Yes, that's fine. So we
I
got
4.
8, 7, and 4. So we've got Anthony. We've got Anthony, and who was yeah. So we got 3, and Mike, you're the third one. So your name was on here. We'll just call him. We'll pick another one.
You gave me a number?
Yeah, I just went through the list. I didn't know you signed up for it.
You triggered me at the signing, and then you didn't know what I signed.
The signing, it says raffle participation.
It's good. It's fine.
All right. Another winner. 6. Who's 6?
But
Kurt.
also often
Kurt 6.
attendance, right? So we check in who showed up here, and then if you guys are not part of the mailing list, we'll, add you to that, so you get notified about the event.
Yeah. So Kurt, you're the third winner. And actually it's a good reminder. Databricks actually did just release a user group. So we'll likely over the next couple of months shift to using the formal Databricks user group webpage. So we'll kind of coordinate that over the next couple of months, and we'll still use ours for a time period until we get everybody in the other system. But that's a big step forward. We'll have one kind of form. So if you're in another state, you can look to see what's available.
I feel bad, we barely touched on a lot of the Databricks stuff. Pretty cool.
I sprinkled some in there.
You got some questions.
Yeah, the blog in there.
Yeah, yes, that's the important
Gotta
thing.
plug it.
Well, have some more pizza, guys. Some more
Yeah, take
soda,
some
whatever
pizza.
it is, but thanks for coming.